Well, good morning, everyone. I think that we will get started, and as people come in, I will continue to let them in. We've got a bit of a dramatic title to this quarter's workshop, as you can see. Let's ditch the drama. So what's that all about? This was something that I always talk to Holly about what sort of subjects that we should have. And Holly, I don't know if you want to say something to get us started. Uh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so this is something that we've been quite intentional about being proactive with when it comes to our people. And I think it all starts with us as leaders around drama, gossip, those types of things. And in every workplace, there is going to be talk. People do gossip, people do talk about things. And I think, what we want to do is discuss today around how we as leaders can basically manage that and reduce the risk of it happening. We know that as our culture, we want to be a drama-free organization, a drama-free culture, and being able to accept others for who they are. So yeah, and I think if any of you are familiar with, I think her name's C.Y. Wakeman.
Cy Wakeman, yeah. We're going to hear from her in a minute, Holly.
Confused with her name. But if anybody's read her book or seen some of her YouTubes, she really goes into a lot of detail around this and how it can really mess with our engagement and productivity when we're at work. So yeah, I know Sharon will expand a little bit more on her concepts throughout this workshop, but that's a little bit of the background. Hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you, Holly. That's great. And as always on these workshops, this is about you guys getting together. So I'll be giving you a few opportunities to get into breakout rooms to really drill down into, okay, so we're hearing a few concepts this morning, and what are we actually going to do about it? How's it going to change things? And how does it fit in with what we're already doing? So thank you for coming in this morning. As Holly said, this concept, and Holly sent me this link to this little clip of, I don't know whether you say CY or Cy, I think Cy Wakeman, and some of you may be familiar with her already. I wasn't actually, Holly, so thank you so much. But I can tell you, this is something I have felt passionately about most of my life, because there are some people who just make a drama out of everything, aren't they? And I even remember teaching my children, who are now long grown up and have children of their own, that, if you scream, there'd better be something really wrong. Because if you just scream for nothing, as they were tending to do, and I sort of run, nearly break my neck to get to you, and then find it's absolutely nothing, let's just not make a big deal out of things that are not a big deal, in other words. So it's something I've always felt strongly about, tried to do myself. It's not always easy, is it? Because sometimes the drama overtakes us. But what I'm going to do is let Cy Wakeman explain her concept to you, and then we're going to have a chance to discuss it. So there's quite a few of you on the call this morning, so probably best whenever you want to speak to put the virtual hand up or wave a real hand if you want to. But as always, I welcome your input. This is not a lecture in any way, shape, or form. This is about me hopefully helping you to have some thoughts that will change your practice and help you all to align as a leadership team to go forwards in how do we tackle these things. I don't know about you, but it's so common in organizations, especially as they grow larger, for this kind of thing to happen. And it's much easier when it's just a small group of people to nip it in the bud and to deal with it. But you guys are growing at a rate of knots, aren't you? And people come into the organization with different cultures than perhaps the one that you're trying to promote within CCG. So how do we address that? What do we do about it? So I'm going to let you listen to Cy Wakeman first. I'll share the sound with you. If anyone has any problems seeing or hearing, please let me know. And I will mute myself as well while it's on to make the sound better for you.
So the three sources of drama are: I hired it, I enable it, allow it, or I am it. I'm Cy Wakeman, and I'm the author of No Ego. I teach leaders how they can cut the costs of drama in their organizations. Today, I'm in New Buffalo, Michigan, speaking to the NIBCO Women's Annual Leadership Conference. I'm excited to talk to the women leaders today about drama. And one of the things I often hear when I ask people about the sources of drama is about other people. It's so typical that when I ask someone, what's the source of drama in your company? They talk to me about people who have meetings after the meetings or other people who resist change. And one of the things I usually have to center people back on is that there's really only 3 sources of drama. So we'll see how the conference starts out and see if this group falls into that same human condition. Awesome. Right. And the real source of drama, folks, if you're highly accountable, there's only 3. There's only 3 true sources of drama. Okay, I hired it, right? Because you're all hiring managers. I allow it or enable it. So I know that they're having a meeting after the meeting and I don't connect with somebody and say, that's truly not a professional way to handle the information we've just given you, or I am it. So the 3 sources of drama are I hired it, I enable it, allow it, or I am it. In your notes, write down the initials S, B as in boy, A, and R, the S bar. The S, after it, just write down situation. And the B stands for background, relevant backgrounds. And the A stands for your analysis or your assessment. And the R stands for your recommendations, plural. It's a template by which I want people to use to process their work and their thinking before they commission my open door or my time together. Most people come to you with unprocessed work. So when people come up to me and they go, Sai, do you have a minute? I say, I can carve some time out. Do you have an S bar? Because that's your price of admission. So when you are creating the S of an S bar, it's I want you to describe in 1 sentence what the situation is. The situation needs to be neutral and without drama. So if somebody says, well, the situation is we got 3 projects dumped on us. Okay, that's not the situation. The situation is simply we have 3 new projects. Then what's the background? Now the background needs to be relevant. The A means you've actually done some fact checking, some data pulling, some analysis. Like, so I went and talked to Al, and Al let me know that it really is not, they're not even aware of it in engineering, that it's something that's happening on the floor. Awesome. Then R, you need to give me recommendations, plural. Give me like 5 recommendations, 3 recommendations. And here's the deal, when you make recommendations, you're okay with any of them. That's how you say mentally flexible. So now when people come up to me and they're like, Sai, I need some of your time, I have 3 S bars is how they say it. And that's what we want, is that type of technique.
Today was phenomenal.
So that was just, I'm just letting some people in a second. What did you think about that? Any thoughts, first of all, before we start drilling down into it?
Once you've said it, it logically makes sense to go through those steps.
Yeah.
But I think, until somebody actually points it out, you don't necessarily follow that kind of order.
Yeah.
From my point.
Absolutely. And thanks, Leona. So what we'll do is start to go through some of those points again. And again, please chip in. This is, your time for you to be able to express your thoughts. And I think no holds barred on this. I'm sure that's right, Holly, that, please say what you think. If we don't say what we think, if there's things going on that are a negative influence or atmosphere, what you're doing as leaders is coming together to help each other through that. And so there's no shame in having a situation that you've allowed to go on for a while or you haven't handled, we're here to help to address that and to help to find some ways forward that work. So I'm going to share the screen again and just go through a couple of the main points that she made. What I will do after this too is I'll make the slides into a PDF and I'll put them into the chat for you at the end so that you've got them. So don't worry about trying to copy it unless you want to. So she said that there were 3 sources of drama. Okay, just bear with me 1 second. Just trying to, Ashley's been having some trouble getting in. She's tried a couple of times. I'm not sure why. Sure, hopefully she's with us now.
I'm here.
So,
I think my Wi-Fi or something's happening, but I'm here. Sorry.
Okay, thanks, Ash. Seem to be a few IT gremlins around today. Sadly, every day, but not to worry. So, 3 sources of drama. I hired it, I allow it, I am it. And interesting that along with that, possibly not in this video, but in other things that she says that if you're highly accountable, that's interesting that she would put that with those 3 things, isn't it? Because accountability is something we talk a lot about. We have a whole workshop on the power of taking ownership where we talk about these things for everybody and what accountability looks like. But accountability as leaders is not allowing the drama to go on around us. So I hired it. Any thoughts on that from anybody? What does that make you think of? Can you think of examples?
I think I haven't got an example, but I think like as a leader, obviously if you're employing, you know, those interviews, it's like really important at those interviews you ask those value questions, isn't it? So that we know what we're bringing into the team. And I think like I've been interviewing a lot recently, and I think it makes a massive difference kind of paying attention to those values, because actually you can teach people the skills that they need, but you can't teach people values, and you can't teach people, you know, when you come along someone who's got drama or they're always going on about the negatives, and actually even if they've got the best qualifications in the world, they're not going to fit in, are they, with the company values? So yeah.
Really good point, Amy. So to try and get a handle on that during the interview process as well. And yeah, as you say, you interview on values rather as well as skills. And so that's one thing. And I guess when you're generating interview questions, just to be asking questions usually about examples of what people have done. And when they're telling their story, that's perhaps when you can pick up if there's perhaps a little too much drama. And certainly beware of those who are bad-mouthing their previous employer, or, you know, going on about, I see some vigorous nods there, you know, I mean, there are some people, everything that happened, they were the victim, and oh, if it weren't for this, I would be this and that and the other. If you hear people going on like that in their interview, probably some alarms should be going off in your head. So because that if people look at life in that way and constantly feel that it's other people that have caused every situation they've been in and the reason that they can't get out of situations, then yeah, that's a bit of a warning, isn't it? Yeah, anything else that might be a warning during the interview stage? Jenny, you were nodding furiously there. Is there any thoughts on that?
In the interview process, you may ask them certain specific questions to explain something where on old terms, you kind of say where an incident went really well and what they've learned from it, and where something didn't go according to plan. And the way people answer the one that didn't go according to plan, they kind of try and skirt away from it, and it becomes somebody else's fault. So that's normally quite a good sign. Or if you ask people about gaps of employment or what happened here, I've noted you've spent 6 months here, 1 year, and how they answer. So I do think you can spot potentially how people, I would call it, have a victim mentality. They just look at it, it's the world's fault, and they haven't learned I'm more open for people that say this has gone wrong and this is what
Yeah.
I've learned from it.
Yeah.
But when they just state the obvious and it's
Yeah.
everybody else's fault.
Yeah, because we're not asking people to be perfect, are we? I've
Yeah.
heard Trevor say that quite a few times. We're all human. We all make mistakes, but it's acknowledging those mistakes, you know? Things didn't go so well in that job, but actually, hands up, part of it was my fault for not getting, you know, I wasn't happy about the way the culture was, but actually, you know, I'm accountable for some of that as well. Yeah, thanks, Jenny. Gemma.
I think as well, particularly in Catalyst, we have our discovery phases.
Yeah.
So within those 6 months, you can start seeing those individuals and maybe seeing the ones that have, let's say, aced the interview, given us everything that we'd like to hear.
Yeah.
And it's putting it into practice. And quite interestingly, it's seeing the subtle differences in people after they've passed their discovery phase.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a couple that they've passed, they've relaxed, and you almost see this complete 360 in their skills and how they work. So it's interesting.
Interesting, yes. But do use that discovery phase wisely, because that is the time that you've got, isn't it, to really know whether or not you're a fit for each other. Yeah. Thanks. Anything else on the hired it? Okay. How about allowing it? It's a tricky one, isn't it? Allowing it. What kinds of things might you allow, Kuti?
Sorry.
Yeah.
I think for me, actually, I mean, those 3 sources of drama is quite interesting, actually, for leaders as well. That actually, if you look at those 3, if you're highly accountable, actually, you've got control over that to a degree.
Yeah.
You've got influence actually over it.
Yeah.
Because if you look at, if you hired it,
yeah,
you know, based on the values, so you got also the power to, you know, fire based on the values. If you're allowing it, you've got also the power to sort of actually hang on, you can stop it. And if you are it, then that's something else.
Yes, that's something else.
So I think there is actually some power in terms of as leaders, actually, in terms of how can actually make sure that this stops. You know, the back stops.
The back stops. Yeah.
At my door.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Thank you, Kuti. Jenny.
I'm going to say that I think it's quite likely that we allow an element of it, because as a company, we're awfully nice people. So so I'm thinking what I'm saying. So we've got the company's ethos and values. Then we are dealing with mental health. Yeah. With those 2 factors and talking about being very humanistic, being very clinician-centric and all these wonderful words, you actually allow people to express themselves. So you allow some elements of it, but I do want to emphasize what Kuti is saying. You need to contain it. So you need to make sure that for me, people can say and behave to a certain degree, however they want in a one-to-one. Do not try that when we are more than 2 people, you know. So I think it's knowing that as a company, we want to kind of help people along the journey. We want to show them that there's a different approach. So you kind of give people time. I've seen a lot of people struggling. Me, myself, struggled. I was in Holly's room more often than ever in the beginning, and Holly sent me back out. Coming from a very structured environment, very rule driven, to going at people's pace, seeing the person as mental health, you keep those reserved for the people that you look after, but you kind of have a different expectation for the people you work with. So I think that does influence it, but then I think it's recognizing it through supervision, through reflection, and then doing something about it.
Thanks, Jenny. Thank you. Yeah, and of course you do still have a duty of care for those who work for you, and to be looking after their mental health as well, but it's knowing where that line is. And I'm going to be talking about the line a little bit later on, because we already talk about the line in The Power of Taking Ownership, and really this is this is where the line is for leaders, really, and thinking about, yes, yeah, we do need to make sure that people's mental health is good, everyone, every colleague, every clinician as well, but it's where that line is, isn't it, is when it goes over that to be negatively affecting other people and the organization. Holly.
Thank you. So yeah, I guess for me, it's an interesting one. The allow it is around, you know, as leaders being able to set the precedents as well, that actually, you know, this level of drama is something that we don't tolerate in this culture, and being able to set the precedents for other people and other leaders in the business as well, that this is something that we don't allow and this is how we deal with it. And I think it's really important to what Jenny was saying. There's absolutely a balance. You know, we want people to feel heard, and there's a different level of, you know, what that looks like. But I think it's how we deliver and how we hold other people accountable for the drama. So it's being able to deliver, you know, feedback with kindness, being able to go about it in a humanized manner. So I really like the fact that, you know, we can be more intentional about making sure that we're recognizing when there is drama and we're not allowing it, but we're delivering it in a way that is still humanized.
Yeah. Thanks, Holly.
And
one of the dramas that Holly, oh, sorry, Steph.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to follow up from Holly's point, because this is something that I talk a lot about with the 5 dysfunctions and around that word accountability. Ultimately, we want to get to is that there's peer-to-peer accountability. So anyone will be able to have that conversation. But as leaders, we have to be the role models of that if we want others in our teams to do it as well. So we do have to role model. And I always use a story of, like, if you were thinking like in a school environment and your mate picked on someone, would you rather your friend as another student tell you not to do that behavior to cause that problem and to have a look at it, or would you want them to tell the head teacher so that you have to get called into their office and be told it? We'd all rather hear it from a friend. And ultimately that's kind of where we want to get to here, where our team members can hold each other accountable and say, look, what's going, no blame, find out the reason why, what's going on, but call out the behavior. And that's where, like, we want ultimately to get to, but it's down to us to role model it first so that they know it's safe to do that.
Yeah, great example, Steph. And, you know, that's exactly it, isn't it? It only needs to be between those two people then, doesn't it? And it doesn't need to go any further. And I think sometimes that, Holly mentioned gossip at the beginning too, as being one of those negative things. And there's a couple of things about gossip. One is that if someone says something to you about a person and it's behind their back, if you like, you know, and it's really negative, the next time you see that person, probably the first thing that's going to come into your head is the negative thing that you heard about that person. And it's going to be really difficult not to think that. Now, the original 2 people may have repaired their relationship, got on with it, be absolutely fine, resolved the issue, but you, having heard it, are left with the residue of that. Has that ever happened to anybody? I'm sure it has. It's human nature, isn't it? So when gossip or talking behind people's backs and things like that is allowed, and I'll use the word allowed because I think it is true, isn't it, to sort of run riot, what happens is that it kind of is a buildup of stuff that people have against each other. Now it's different, you know, sorting an issue out, like Steph said, that's, you know, between 2 people, that's fine, over. But once it starts to spread beyond that to lots of other people who really don't need to know about it, then it becomes an issue, doesn't it? And it's an issue then that's much harder to deal with. A very wise person once said to us, to a group of us, and I've always remembered it, if you're the sort of person who's a really great listener and lots of people come to you and tell you all sorts of things about other people, and you get that uncomfortable feeling that actually, you know, this has gone, we're talking behind that person's back and it's not really great. One thing you can do is say, should we just give that person a call or let them in on the call so that we can talk about it with them? And you'll find that will soon stop people from running and telling other people. And it's a technique we can tell our teams as well, because sometimes you explicitly have to say that kind of environment where everybody's talking behind everybody's backs, especially, and then when one team is negative about another team, it's really toxic. It's really toxic, isn't it? And it can be extremely hard to stop if we allow it. So we have to find some strategies, if you like, to stop it. I don't know if anyone has any other strategies that they have found that work. So Steph's told you one, I've told you a couple too. Anything else?
We generally roll with the talk to the right person, so quite similar to the phone call.
Yeah.
So if someone was to come and start talking to me in a gossipy way, and you know, in that it's that sort of, okay, is this the right person that this is? Potentially, if it's something private, for instance, maybe someone's discussing a baby, you can just go, well, is that actually your news to share? And we need to then be mindful and sort of redirect the conversation.
Yeah.
And if it happens repeatedly, you can sort of step it up a little bit more. But yeah, the phone call is quite a good technique too.
Yeah, a redirect is a good word, Jim, I think, for that too, isn't it? So obviously sometimes people will be coming to tell you things as a leader that's legitimate, that's fine. But as she said, it's the way that they do it really, isn't it? Are they doing it with drama or not? So let's go on to the next slide there. And she used this little technique, SBAR, situation, background, analysis, and recommendations. I don't know what you thought about that. Any comments about that? So if someone is going to come to you with something, instead of coming and having a big meltdown or, you know, drama in your office, or, you know, oh my goodness, you'll never guess what's going on, this and this, what are we going to do? To sort of pull people back to say, well, what actually is the situation? And again, that drama that can come from not the actual facts of what is happening, but our addition of drama to that. And
Sharon,
yeah, go on.
I absolutely love this concept, because I think what it does is really takes the emotion out of the situation.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key. You know, we've all experienced it as leaders. We'll have somebody that's come to us and been very panicky, and there's a lot of emotion involved. And actually, we may not be thinking 100% rationally when there are those heightened emotions. So one of the things that Joe Andrews talks about as well, it's quite similar to this concept of the situation, background analysis, and the recommendations, is the START method. So you're able to ask your people before they come to you, what's the situation, what's happened, take the emotion out of it, analyze the situation. So why did the situation arise? What's the solution? Like bring some solutions, and what are the pros and cons of that solution? So if you're able to use that sort of method before people come to you with that, it does sort of cut out that then drama and the emotions of the situation.
Yeah. And that's part of the not allowing it, isn't it? Because, you know, it's how do we then, if we have people who tend to be that way, how do we help them to realize that actually the drama that they're adding isn't helpful either to them or to anybody else?
I think as well, as a leader, you're then sort of, you know, being able to role model, that's your expectations, that they start to learn to come with, you know, with every situation, they'll start coming to you with, here are the recommendations, here's the solution, I've taken the emotion out of it. So as a leader, it also makes your life a lot easier as well. So it's an interesting concept.
Yes, and as you said, modeling it yourself, so that, you know, if you tend to be on the drama king or queen side, you know, to be learning to manage that too, because we can all be there sometimes, can't we, over different situations that come up. Okay. So what Cy Wakeman says as well is, it's the story that we make up about our reality that causes the stress. So it's not that something isn't happening. It's not that there isn't a problem or a situation or an issue or whatever we want to call it. It's not that. It's the story we make up around it, you know, that is the drama, if you like, that causes stress. And I really like that second quote, excuses are the fog around lack of accountability. You know, people making excuses for why things need to be a drama. Because sometimes when you unpick things, it could be that the drama is just that someone didn't get around to doing something soon enough, you know, or didn't follow a process that they should have followed, or something like that. And, you know, rather than that it's happened all of a sudden. So a lot of things are preventable. Would you agree? A lot of crises, if you look back on them, are preventable, you know, if we had done things ahead of time. So sometimes part of that might be to sit down with the person after everything's been sorted out and say, okay, so how could we have handled that differently? You know, let's go back and say, you know, what went wrong there? That, you know, not blaming people, but unpicking it and having a review. What went wrong? How could we prevent this happening next time? How can we make sure we put some measures in place so that next time it isn't such a drama? So any thoughts about that? Anyone had any crises in the...
Well, I was going to say,
Amy, go on.
It goes back to the accountability, doesn't it? So, you know,
Yes.
you think of your story, it's like, what are you able to control yourself? Actually, when you're kind of looking outside yourself, you're blaming other people, there's a whole situation. The one thing that you can control is your own reaction, isn't the way that you respond to things. So it's kind of working on that, if you like. So instead of like externalizing everything, you think, okay, so that's happened, what can I control in this situation? Actually, what I can control is the way that it impacts me and the way that it affects me. So it's just a kind of strategy of kind of working in crisis situations. Really, it's like, you know, taking a breath, dealing with it yourself, and actually being like, okay, that's happened, but actually that's all external, and taking control, I guess.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, Amy, thank you.
I find I'm quite emotional, or passionate, as you'd like to call it, a little bit differently. And I guess when I first started in this world, I'd be working on a project and it would suddenly fall apart for whatever reason, not to do with me, but external issues. And my initial gut feeling was to bish bash bosh, you know, keyboard warrior, because this is how I was feeling emotionally. And it was, I'll be honest with you, when I first started my journey, it was the fact that I'd sent an email like that, and the response that I received, it wasn't harsh. I didn't lose the client, but it does make me check sometimes. And now I will still write the email. I don't put anything in the subject header, but I go away, make a coffee, or I'll come back to it the next morning and try to. Sometimes you don't, and sometimes of it, but that's definitely something I have had to work on constantly and will probably forever, because you just want to get that, you know, that message across.
Yeah, thanks, Leona. And having some strategies like that can really help, can't they?
Really
Definitely. Cootie, you had your hand up next, I think.
Yeah, I was just saying, I think part of that also is about knowing the people and knowing yourself as well. Part of the drama isn't necessarily coming from a place of, you know, people being malicious, but it's a way of coping.
Yes.
And I also know that there's some people that tend just to be on the exaggeration side of things.
Yes.
You know, they see a small thing, oh, the world is crumbling. You know, so I think that's the way of people sometimes coping with difficult situation, and all they can do is create the drama so that they can get the attention and the support.
Yes. Yes, thanks, Cootie. And again, as leaders, we can set an example and help them to learn a different way of doing things too. Steph, I think you or somebody in the room was next.
Hello.
Oh, hi.
I was just going to say, sorry, hey.
Is that April? Okay.
It is. Hello.
Okay.
I was just going to say that in my team, something that the team obviously struggle with quite a lot is our whole into role, the clinician care role, is just around customer service. So when we speak to clinicians and we get a general consensus on a daily basis that customer service across the business is not where it needs to be, that's something that the team really struggle to wrap their heads around. So it's actually something that as a leader, I'm going to make sure is part of our VTO moving into the next quarter, is not about poking flaws at other brands and blaming other brands for why it's not top tier. It's how can we be more proactive in covering the things that we feel is lacking in general, and picking those things up and running with them so that others don't have to, and also trying to get them to understand what everyone else does around the business on a daily basis. And for me, you know, just even if they were to be able to sit with another team for a day, just to observe what they have to do in a day will help them understand a lot of what everyone else has to do, because it's very easy to sit there and listen to a clinician say, well, this hasn't happened, that hasn't happened, take the clinician side and not, you know, take the emotion out of it, as we've been saying, and form a bias.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm very conscious of and that I want to take into the VTO moving into the next quarter, is how can we be proactive about where we've dropped the ball all round when it comes to customer service.
Yeah.
And how can we help other people rather than just blaming people for when things don't go the way we think it should. So yeah, and I definitely do think I can over exaggerate all the time. Like when I talk about my children, you know, I said yesterday I got severely beaten by my child for giving her Weetabix instead of Freddo. I wasn't severely beaten. I had a few slaps on the bum, but humor is my way of coping.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I know when, you know, I know when I can be dramatic, and I always have that TikTok in my head, you know, the one, is it me? Am I the drama? So yeah.
Don't stop being yourself, April. The presentation of yours I saw was one of the best I have ever seen, and I was gutted that it didn't get recorded for whatever.
I will re-record it at some point, don't worry.
Please do. But yeah, no, don't stop being yourself. Humor is absolutely fine. There's no problem with that. But it's just helping people to see where the line is, isn't it? And as you say, when it gets to everything is everybody else's fault, let's blame everybody else instead of let's stop and look and say, what could we do differently? Or how could we let those other people know how they can work with us in a way that's going to be helpful, rather than just raising barriers that will mean that communication won't happen properly anyway. Maya.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say that I've also noticed that people can also learn drama from one another.
Yes.
And if it's not prevented, it can become like a team mentality.
Yes.
And people can spend hours in discussing the issue and who said what and complaining instead of finding a solution.
Yeah.
And I've had situations where, I mean, I've had to show people that the time spent complaining can be spent in finding a solution for the issue instead. And I think if people want to accept that, and they realize that's easier and more convenient resolving issues than discussing the issue in hours, then we're on the right track.
Yeah, thanks, Maya. And I think if by showing them that and modeling that, what you're doing is not allowing the drama, then that becomes the culture on the team, doesn't it? Because yeah, that's just how we do things on the team, so that when people do introduce drama, they feel a little bit like, oh, you know, I'm a bit out of place here. This doesn't fit with the rest of the team culture. And so hopefully then it becomes a perpetuating thing. It takes a while to change a culture, but once it's changed, then that can really be embedded, can't it, in just the way that people behave, or how they don't behave, what things are not okay and not acceptable too within the team culture. Anyone else have any thoughts on that? Okay, well then, so a couple of people have put things in the chat. Just let me. Yeah, okay. I'll share the screen again, and I'm sharing something that hopefully is familiar with you. This is not the actual words. I've changed the words above and below the line, but we've been using this concept of the line since Trevor asked me to develop a workshop on accountability probably 5-6 years ago now. We've changed the title of the workshop, and I've adapted it and revised it and revamped it many times. But as Holly and I were talking earlier this week, I just thought, you know, this is language that we use already, and a common language can really help in these situations. And the language with taking accountability, and this is true of all of the things we're talking about, because we're talking about being accountable here, is just that's below the line or that's above the line. And sometimes just if people get this concept and we discuss with the team what above the line looks like, what below the line looks like, then when an incident occurs, just saying that's above the line or that's below the line can be all that's needed. Since Trevor introduced me to, it was a book called The Oz Principle that this originally came from, which has been around a very long time, and it's about the Yellow Brick Road and the Wizard of Oz. And I have kind of gone away from using that as a model because I'm not everyone's familiar with the story. But basically, this has helped me a lot to realize where I've been below the line with things. And I think I'm not that kind of a person, but actually I've called myself out a number of times since I've been introduced to this concept. You know, when you get those moments where things go wrong or someone else has done something and you find your mind going around and around, well, you know, there they go again, and oh, you know, and I've caught myself quite a few times and been able to say, you know what, that's below the line. And it's just been enough to help me to recognize that I need to stop going on that negative spiral and start thinking in a different way. And I found it so helpful. I think it's a helpful and easy and simple concept for people to understand. And for this particular workshop, I changed a few of the words there. And after we've gone through this, we'll have a little break, and then I'm going to have you in breakout rooms to explore what this actually looks like on your teams and what you could do about it. But I've put above the line is things like communication without drama. So yes, people do need to communicate things with us when they go wrong. Obviously they do. That's fine. But it needs to be communicated without the drama in the ways that we've been talking about. Commitment to whatever we're doing. That problem-solving mentality, you know, rather than coming with, as Kuti said, the world's coming to an end. It's, you know, we need to find solutions. And I loved what she said with the S on recommendations. When we do the creative problem-solving workshop, I always say the same thing. We need more than one so that we can evaluate which is the best. So if we can come up with a few solutions, then we can evaluate, well, actually, this is the best one in this situation, rather than the first thing that came into our heads, which might be the best one, but actually quite often isn't if we spend a little time analyzing. So accountable to put those solutions into practice and open to change and continuous improvement. Because isn't that where a lot of the drama comes? Oh, they've moved the goalposts again. Oh, I was just getting used to doing it this way. And, you know, then they've told me now it's something else. Yeah, am I right? So in times of change, that can be where all of this comes up. But you know what? We're in a time of change all the time, aren't we? And we're going to be. No one can promise that there won't be changes coming along. We don't know what's coming along, do we? We don't know where we might be this time next year in terms of the business, or who knows? It could have doubled in size again by this time next year. Who knows? And for some people, even growth is an uncomfortable change, isn't it? Some people like it when it's cozy. Oh, I've been on this team for ages. I know everybody, and I don't know that I like it that people keep coming in that I don't know and that are different from me, and all of that can add to this. So being above the line means being accepting of change and willing to continuously improve, realizing that we're never actually there. We're, you know, obviously we can't be perfect, but even in trying to be excellent, there's always room for improvement, isn't there? There's always somewhere to go. So, you know, we've got to be open to that. And when we get to the point of saying, oh, I'm not doing that, I've done this way for the last 5 years and I'm not doing it in a different way, or I'm not changing the way I approach this, then we're in trouble. So those things are above the line. So below the line, some of those things I've got: blaming other people, not solving problems, making excuses, feeling helpless, not achieving our potential, and on and on. A lot of the things we've been talking about. So what do you think about that as a concept and a simple common language? Above the line, below the line. Does that work for you?
I wonder
Yes,
if it might be worth having something like this, you know, maybe even on a wall somewhere, or, you know, just so that it's visible as a reminder. Yeah. Because I think we can all get caught up in the day-to-day. And as you say, Sharon, there's a huge amount of change going on, a huge amount of growth in people, in teams, in processes, in ways of doing things. And it might just be helpful to have that dotted around in a couple of places in the office.
Yeah, just to remind people of that common language. And just a little plug, we're doing that workshop next week. I think it's Thursday, the power of taking ownership. And on another point, Jenny's trying to coordinate something to do with training generally. And I've been talking to Tamsin and Holly, and, you know, take up from colleagues on a lot of these workshops is getting rather low considering how many people there are in the organization. And I think, I'm not sure if this is one of the mandatory ones at the moment, Holly. I'm thinking it may well be, but anyway, if you know people who would benefit from going on this, I think I saw an email go out this morning from Urta. Steph, did you want to say something, or someone in your room?
No, I was just confirming that Alison sent the email out this morning.
Thanks, Urta. I did see, it is Urta, isn't it? You're a long way away. It's like, who is it there? Yeah. Yeah, I saw an email go out this morning. So, when those emails go out, there are loads of, there are not many organizations who provide as much time in work time for people for personal development. And I think you can all relate to that. It's not common, is it, for people to be allowed so much time. So I would say part of above the line is everyone working on their personal development, and as leaders encouraging the people on your team, to take up the opportunities that there are for personal development, because that we talk about these subjects every workshop in some way or another, and remind people about accountability, remind people about taking account of others, and all of those things. So problem solving, whatever it might be. So just to help to scaffold, reinforce the culture, the values. So do that. Any other thoughts?
I did think it's a bit interesting when you spoke around below the line being a spiral.
Yeah.
Because it does become a real catch-22. As soon as sort of you're on that, you can spiral down really quickly.
Yes.
It's an interesting
bit like a hamster wheel. And also you can pull other people with you, because if you look at morale, which is morale, you can't separate morale from motivation. So morale, demotivation, if you see that kind of culture environment on a team when morale's really low, I'll bet you anything there's a lot of grumbling going on, there's a lot of negative conversations, there's a lot of oh, he did this, she said that, oh, I'm not happy about this, and it just feeds it all feeds each other, doesn't it? Amy?
Hiya. So we use a really similar concept. Well, we use the same concept of below the line and above the line when we're training people, working with people with EUPD. And it's about trying to get people to just focus on the specific thing they're talking about, and you don't go, you don't go below the line. So it's like, they're talking about, I'm having my music's up too loud in the room. Then, oh, you hate me because my music's up too loud. It's like what we're focusing on is the one thing. So the below the line and above the line concept I really like, because that also goes along some of the stuff that we talk to the clinicians about when we're trying to train them and upskill them and kind of responding to people like in the correct way. So yeah, I like it. I think it's a good concept, and it's definitely something that should be shared kind of widely across the organization.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. And it's always really helpful to be able to align with what you guys are doing. So, and sometimes because I'm not in that field, I always feel free to let me know how you're doing things, with clinicians or with clients, because I like to incorporate it. Thankfully, we're seeing more and more clinicians come on to workshops. Last week, I did 3 workshops and I only had clinicians, which is a first. That was wonderful. But the sad thing was there were no colleagues whatsoever who signed up. So that was not good. But, it's great that we can align these things, isn't it, across the way? And especially with the PBS, I'd love to know more about it and the different techniques you use, because hopefully it all aligns. We don't want to be sending lots of different messages out, do we? So, but this is just such a simple language, and I think everyone can understand, oh, that was a bit below the line. You could say that to a colleague without having to go into details, and hopefully they would suddenly go, oh yeah, it was, wasn't it? Without you having to go into the, well, when you said this and that. Do you know what I mean? Because hopefully if we pick it up in time, should be able to see that. Yeah, definitely. Steph, no problem about that at all. Do you mean the power of taking ownership, or the concept?
No, this particular one, let's ditch the drama. I think, there's been a lot of that within support teams at the moment as well. So I really think alongside with the ABC framework that we've rolled out, this would be a really good workshop for them to be able to attend.
Yeah, Urta, can we add that to the list, or see if we can fit it in somewhere?
I'm sure we can.
Next quarter. Yeah. Okay. No prob. Okay. So how about we have a little break, and then when we come back, I'm going to ask you to go into breakout rooms and to be discussing ways we could implement this in practice. You know, what does this look like? What are some of the issues perhaps that we're encountering in our teams, and how can we get this above the line? What kinds of things can we do to get it above the line in the light of the input we've had this morning? So before the break, we were talking about things that may be going on teams that are below the line, dramas, gossip, exaggerations. We've used all those words so far this morning. What we're going to do now is to go into breakout rooms, and I'm going to give you 15 minutes in the room, and I've got 6 rooms, and I'm going to give you 15 minutes to talk about some of the things that you see that would come under those categories on your teams, and just begin to talk about some ways to that you could get them above the line. Okay, and then what we'll do is come back and share with the whole group. Any questions before I let you go? I think that's everyone back, and some of you clearly were in mid-thought as you came back, and some of you had already finished. That's absolutely fine. So I think what we'll do is one room at a time, just give one example first, and then we'll see how far we get, because I'm aware that there may be a lot of similar things that come up, and also I want to give every group time to share back. So one thing that you talked about that was to do with people being below the line and how to get them above the line in the first group is Amy, Kuti, Maria, and Paul.
Okay, I can jump in then.
Well then, Kuti.
I think one of the things that can easily be misused is the use of emails. People can just send an email that can, and even as a leader, you just say, "Oh my God, how could they send that email to this department?" And it can be very, very, very toxic. But sometimes people can be talking from their own emotional state rather than actually for what the reality is. So I think that's kind of very difficult to catch, and it can become very toxic as well. But I think the best way just to manage that is to give that individual some feedback.
Yes, thanks, Kuti. And we're going to go on to talk about feedback in a little way. And yeah, some advice. Leona came up with a good one earlier, didn't she? When we ourselves are in that situation of sending something that might be toxic, not to send it for a while, or I put it in drafts, but as Leona said, you could maybe just not even write the subject line. But yeah, just I think the key thing is there, it does need to be addressed, doesn't it? So if you're aware that one of your team or somebody else are frequently sending toxic emails, then it does need to be addressed, doesn't it? So that's part of not allowing it, I guess. Thank you, Kuti. So, and room 1, and we may come back to you. We'll see how much time we have for another one. Room 2 was Ivana, Kim, and all the people in the office under Steph's name.
So I think the learning definitely for me, and the takeaway for me, was the use of language. I know that there's definitely some people within my team who are more hardwired to think negatively before they think positively. So Ivana made a very good point that in the marketing team, they don't discuss issues, they discuss opportunities.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I'm going to take into my team as well. And just try and get people to think of the positive outcomes and solutions rather than, okay, what is the issue? Because sometimes it's not even an issue, it's just situation.
It's something that we try to implement after Joe trainings within the digital team. So instead of before each L10, we go through the headlines, we go through the ideas section to the scorecards, and I noticed that in the previous months, when we talk about the ideas section within the digital team, we talk a lot about issues, and the time has passed and not have too much time to talk about the solutions. So I changed the wording. Instead of ideas and issues, I put opportunities, and it's interesting how the mindset has changed only because of the change of the word of the section. So I believe it's the negative intent that we put in things sometimes with not knowing that the wording that we use is putting a negative intent on the things that we wanna we want to say to the team. And I think it's crucial for us to be as transparent as we can, since drama is born in secret environments. So yeah.
Absolutely right, Ivana. Lots of good points there. Language is so powerful, isn't it? And you can really change the way people think by using a different word. I know one simple change that I've made over the years is when you're tempted to say but, say and instead. Because just that simple little change, you'd be amazed at the difference it makes in just turning something around from a positive. Because as soon as you hear the word but, you're like, oh, what's coming? To the and we could do this. So yeah, thank you. Room 2. Room 3 was Angela, Chantel, Holly, and Robin.
I don't mind talking on behalf of our group.
Thanks, Holly.
So there was quite a kind of trend within our group actually on how we sort of try to keep our people above the line instead of below the line. And one of the things that was that we talked about quite a lot was around getting our people to take the emotions out and really reflecting before responding. So we actually talked about, you know, sometimes asking our people to sleep on things, or like you said, to go outside and have a breath of air and then come back in and respond. So really being intentional about taking the emotions out and also not taking the emotions on as a leader. So there was a concept that I read in a book about monkeys a couple of years ago, and people bringing lots of monkeys into your office, and by the end of the day you've got literally 10 or 12 monkeys jumping around your office tugging on you. And one of the things that they talk about was, you know, being able to pass the monkey back and give that person ownership and accountability of, this is your monkey, this is your challenge. Of course, as leaders, we're here to support, enable, and to coach, but actually we want them to take full ownership of that challenge or issue that they're experiencing with someone else. So yeah, I hope I've captured that, guys. I didn't know if you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I think one other thing that we said was when we hear conversations within teams across the business, which is potentially quite damaging, we really focus on our core values and we say, where does that fit in with our core values? Because that for me isn't aligned at all.
Yeah, that's right, Chantel. So again, not allowing it, isn't it? And I like what you said, Holly, about the encouraging people to take ownership. And that's exactly why we changed the name of that workshop from accountability to the power of taking ownership, because there is power in that for the individual as well. Because if you go through life just pushing the accountability onto somebody else, it's not doing yourself any favors either, is it? So helping people to see that actually you're going to grow as you take accountability for things is fantastic. Yeah, thank you so much, Room 3. Room 4 was Amy, Carol, Chloe, and Jenny.
Hi, yeah, you're right. So we talked about like a case study. So we actually only got time to go through like one because it took us that long to get to the end. And Chloe had all of about 10 seconds to have a conversation, and then she got laughing. So we were talking about a staff member who was particularly so when he first started, he was really good, kind of followed the procedures, really fit with the values, was they thought he was going to be really great, had all the competencies. And then it was about 4 months when he started taking on more and more responsibilities, and they didn't see any of the kind of below the line behavior. They thought he was a really great employee. And then there was something that didn't go quite right. And then there was a meeting around that, and then his whole behavior completely changed. And then he was doing all the below the line stuff. So he was blaming others. He was kind of throwing other staff members under the bus. He was like, it's not my fault, I haven't done it, they did this, wasn't listening to any feedback or any support. And then, I mean, they tried lots of things with him. So they tried, you know, kind of doing some critical analysis, supporting him to see the issue, supporting him to look at himself and the way he was behaving. They had a lot of meetings. They kind of set some clear expectations of him and did some more regular supervisions. But it didn't actually work. I mean, in the end, he ended up resigning, I think. So it was one of those, I mean, it was Carol's story, so I probably haven't told it as well as she might have done, but it might have taken me 15 minutes if I tried to say all the things that we talked about. But yeah, so it was that kind of open line of communication. But sometimes when people aren't open to kind of looking at themselves, and when they're constantly externalizing all their problems, it's really difficult. It's kind of, how do you support someone to focus, and understand, they were doing all the right things, like open communication, sitting down with him, trying to, he wasn't accepting any of those things. And then in the end, he was like, I'm gone. I think it was like a values mismatch. So
yes, and that leaves a sad feeling for everybody, doesn't it? Because obviously you want it to work out with people, and it's always sad when it doesn't. Does anyone, just to sort of go on from what Amy was saying there, does anyone have any strategies that they have found has worked when you've had someone who's as below the line as that? Or is it just a matter of saying, sorry, but we're going to be parting company?
I think like self-reflection, it's supporting them to work out what their underlying issues are. I would think, is there kind of some external therapy? There's probably some trauma there. There's probably something going on outside of work that's impacting their ability to take ownership of things. So it's about trying to support them to kind of support themselves, really, emotionally well-being, to get to a place where they are then able to take ownership of their own kind of practice, I guess.
I know within the office we used a wellness action plan, which we've used, and that really brought to light the behaviours for the individual, what was driving those behaviours. That did help, and it did help because that individual wanted to be different and wanted to take those steps to change. It hasn't always been successful. I've had times where I've utilised it and it hasn't been successful, surely because we've managed to identify with the individual the challenges. They just were not ready themselves personally to take those challenges forward. So it did end up in a way where we said, okay, do you think this is the right place? And they sort of saw it for themselves that Catalyst wasn't the right place for them, and sort of stepped away. But those wellness action plans have been really useful when it's been behavioural problems.
Thanks, Gemma. Is that something everyone has access to, or could you share it perhaps?
Holly, do we have access? I got it from Tam.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have it as like a resource within HR, but it can absolutely be used. What we want to do is sort of for everybody to have one at some stage, because they are really, really useful, and we've all got a certain level of, mental health. So it's something we will rule out across the board as well, eventually.
Thanks, Holly. It just sounded like something that people might want to try themselves when they could. That's great. Thank you. Room 5 was Anna, Claire, and Rebecca.
And then, okay. Can I talk, guys? I was the one taking the notes. So in our experience, usually, as Kuti said, drama starts from email, Zoom, Teams, and as you know, these days we have a gap in communication because of hybrid or or remote working environment. So it's a struggle that we all face. Because communication, live communication with the person is very different from email, and words can be perceived in different ways. So also we talked about how do we face our strategies, how we can better our communication and the communication between our colleagues. So when leaders communicate the something or an issue the right way and give clear direction, there is no room for assumption. So you address it straight away, and you also don't wait. Also, when we agreed that when we address an issue, we break it down. And we elaborate on things, so a person can understand what was wrong, what was happening, and while addressing it, we ask a lot of questions and not just blame. person, but ask where are you coming from, what is happening, why do you think this is okay, and why, how do you think this will affect other people and or affect that person if it's between two people. After that, we agreed that the person needs to take accountability, and after addressing also the issue, we agreed that we need there needs to be a follow-up for continuous improvement. So yeah.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank
That sounded
you.
really comprehensive. Anything else from anyone in that group? No. Thank you, Rebecca. That was great.
Thank you.
And lastly, room 6, Ellie, Gemma, Leona, and I'm not sure that Maya was able to attend, but would one of you?
Yeah, so we spoke about giving feedback on the spot and the pros and cons of that, and how sometimes it can be a positive thing because we're enabling that person to grow. But on the spot feedback can also create drama and gossip between that team if it's done in front of others.
Yeah.
Then we spoke about how there's always a reason for someone's behavior. So it's understanding the reason for their behavior and why they may be creating drama or feeling that they, you know, need to create that drama. Is it created through uncertainty, or is it because they, you know, is there a certain reason for it? So if you can understand why, then you can help that person. So yeah, and then we just spoke about how it comes down to respect for your leaders and trust in your leaders.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Ellie. Absolutely. Gemma, did you want to say something? Yeah.
Just going to add on to the behaviours. Once we've understood the behaviour, then to help that person understand the impact of their behaviour, and that should hopefully help them to start going from a place of self-awareness around certain things to self-leadership and start taking that ownership through those accountability steps.
Yeah. And again, we talk lots about that on the emotional intelligence workshop, you know, so that to help people see that that self-awareness is the first step, isn't it, really, to being able to manage those emotions in a better way. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, all of you. Were there any other things that came up in any of the groups that we haven't fed back? Because I just sort of asked you to do one thing each for the sake of everyone having a chance to share. Anything else anyone had that came up that they would like to share?
We did a discussion within our group around how, as leaders, it really does start and stop with us, and being mindful of our relationships. We can be having quite an innocent conversation and people will ask us questions, and if we're not in tune to some of these questions, this individual might then take that story and sort of add a bit to it, and then they go and have a conversation. And you know, we all have really good relationships with everyone right through the business, so those sort of unwavering things that we might not be in tune to can suddenly have this drama effect because we've either not answered it, or you know, we've not been able to give something, or we've given a kind of a false answer where people have then snowballed with it, if that makes sense.
With it. A bit of a Chinese whispers type scenario. And as leaders, how should you handle that? If you're aware that there's a sort of Chinese whispers going on, that people are talking about things and really they've taken it way beyond what it is, and you become aware of it, what's a good way of handling it, anyone?
In the past, when I've had a conversation with someone, and it's a piece of advice that Trevor gave me a few years ago, I can't remember exactly what the conversation was, and you know, we were having a chat and he said, well, in that situation, maybe what you could do is call that person back or have a follow-up conversation and say, you know, in that moment, maybe I wasn't as clear, or maybe what I said didn't serve you in the right way.
Yeah.
So, you know, I found that, you know, there have been a couple of occasions where I've done that, where I thought, oh gosh, I think I said something and it was perceived not quite in the way that it was intended.
Yeah.
I've called up and said, I've been thinking about it and reflecting. This is the message.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Is it Ash?
Yeah.
I found a cooler room.
You're all very tiny on my screen. I recognized your voice as much as you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, really good advice, isn't it? And I think I don't know if anyone's ever done that. I know I had a conversation with somebody last week, and as I left, it wasn't within Catalyst. It was in a personal matter, but afterwards I just didn't feel right about it. There was just something. And I thought I'd perhaps offended that person or said something, but I called them and there wasn't an issue, but maybe there was and they didn't say so, I don't know. But it's clearing things up right away, I think, is good, isn't it? To stop them snowballing if you're aware. Thank you, Ash. Yeah, any other thoughts from anyone? Or anything else you'd like to share from your groups? Okay, I'll share the screen again because Ellie just mentioned about feedback, and that was the next thing I was going to talk about, really, how we can do that. And I know that you have lots of learning about giving feedback from lots of different sources. And again, I don't want to muddy the water, but this was the way that Cy Wakeman had put it. The heading is mine. You know, I firmly believe that all feedback is useful information. It's useful information about how things are going. And if we're in the habit of giving it just in a neutral, normal, objective way all the time about how things are going, then on the odd occasion where we have to pick someone up on something or address negative behavior, it's so much easier to do because we're not characterized by that old, if you say, I want to have a word with you, you know, someone's heart is going to sink and they're going to think, oh no, what now? So because, you know, if it's just what you're characterized by, you frequently catch people doing the right thing, then on the odd occasion where you have to address things that are negative, it's not nearly as hard to do it, is it? And acknowledging people all the time. I mean, feedback, as I say, useful information. So it's acknowledging when you did this, it really contributed to the whole team getting through, meeting its targets. Or when you did that, it really helped me to be able to get through my work today so that I could go home. But being specific about how we acknowledge what people did, it's like you're not gushing and saying, oh, you are absolutely amazing, which is fine, but it's much more motivational to point out this is exactly what you did that made a difference. And if we do that most of the time in a positive way and just giving out of information, then when we do have to address negative things, it's not nearly so hard. Holly.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to what you were saying, Sharon, because we touched on this topic in one of the workshops that I ran yesterday.
Okay.
And we talked about no surprises, and we have, as an organisation, part of our culture is that there are no surprises. So we don't want to be in a position where we're having a one-to-one with somebody or a conversation with one of our team members or anyone, as a matter of fact, and they are genuinely shocked or surprised at some of that feedback that we're giving them. We almost want them to be very aware that they know that there are those things that you've already had those conversations about, and that, they have that ownership of those things. So it's just to be very intentional to constantly keep thinking, no surprises, no surprises.
No surprises, yes. And just giving that information, because everyone needs to know how they're doing. And, you know, if they don't know how they're doing, then they're not going to improve. And if you wait until they're doing really badly, then it's a little bit late, isn't it, to do something about it. So, just continually giving that information and one-to-ones, but just, you know, general conversation just really helps people to know where they are according to your expectations. So, you know, you set your expectations, and then the way that people know whether they're meeting them or not is the frequent feedback. And don't forget, if they are meeting them, to give that feedback too, because, you know, it's the people, the outstanding people we notice, the people who aren't doing well enough we notice, but the people that just we can rely on to just come in, do what they're supposed to do and never cause any hassle, they also need feedback. Don't they, about how much you appreciate them. People need to feel valued. So feedback is a way of helping people to feel valued. And I think we're in a culture across the working world today where, especially with younger people, and I don't want to be ageist, I'm older than all of you, I'm sure, so I'm not being ageist, but I think there is more of a culture now that people actually welcome and want to know feedback that will help them to grow. And that's the kind of culture that you are fostering within CCG, isn't it? So, you know, if you tell me something that could improve what I'm doing, then I want to welcome that rather than feel defensive about it, because after all, you've got my best interests at heart. So on the screen there, I've got a couple of tips as well. You know, if people know that we care, you know, so as soon as someone starts giving me feedback, the first thing I'm going to think is, you know, what's your motive here? What's your motive here? Are you trying to, you know, put me down? Because some people have come from environments where the only time they did get feedback was when people were telling them off. And, you know, as Steph's analogy being dragged into the head teacher's office, you know, and so people are like, oh, you know, what are your motives here? So we have to demonstrate that it's coming from a place of care, that we really do care about people. Once they really understand that we care about them, it's much easier for them to receive what we have to say. Because if we think that someone is telling us something and they really care about us, they really care about our development, they really care about how we're doing, then we are probably going to be much more likely to be open and receptive to doing what they ask us to do. Whereas if we think they've got an ulterior motive, we're suspicious and we're defensive. And I think what you might find as more and more people come in from other organizations, and I know I've talked about this quite a lot of times on workshops with people who've come in from other organizations, it might take a little while for people to be convinced that you really do care. Yeah, because a lot of people have come from organizations where they do need to be suspicious about the boss's motives. So, you know, showing people that you really care. I care about you, so I'm going to help you understand that you can be better than this. That's where you're coming from with that kind of feedback. And then clearly letting them know this is what is working, this is what's not working yet, and this is what's possible. And that was one of the things that came from Cy Wakeman's videos, not that one, but other ones. You know, so people want to know, do you care about me? Can I trust you? Are you committed to excellence? Yeah. Any thoughts on those things, or how you've seen them implemented?
Sharon, I was just going to add what you said about it. Some people might not be used to it.
Yeah.
I think as a leader giving feedback, we all have to also be prepared that it's not going to always be welcomed at the first time. If they are going through that kind of adjustment period, and not let it put us off with the reaction we might get. Just trust that we know the good intention behind it, and we know that ultimately it's what's best for them, it's what's best for the whole team, that we address, that we give good feedback as well as feedback on where improvements can be made. And so we have to kind of build our resilience as well with that in these situations, to be prepared that initially it might not always be welcomed, but hopefully further down the road everyone will be on the same page and understand it was for the benefit of the individual.
Yeah, thanks, Steph. Keep on reassuring people, because believe it or not, some people can even be suspicious of positive feedback and think, have you got a motive here? Why are you telling me this? What is it? Yeah, so I see lots of nods on that one. So yeah, definitely we might not immediately be welcomed. Holly?
I think when we talk about trust as well, seeing it as like the foundation for any relationship, within your team, or within any relationship really, outside of work and inside of work, is that if you're able to build that, it reminds me of the rapport bridges that Tamsin's talked about before. Many of you probably know about these rapport bridges, that the stronger the bridge, the stronger the relationship, the more you can feed back, and they'll receive it in a good way because they trust your intentions as a leader. You've built that foundation. So I think it's just really important to, first of all, build those relationships, really meaningful relationships with the people that you work with, so that they do receive that feedback, as that they do trust that you care about them.
Yes, absolutely, Holly. And Steph referred to the dysfunctions of the team earlier, and that's the absolute foundation of that too, isn't it? Whichever way you look at it, trust has to come first, and it might take a little while with some people. Maya?
Yeah, so even though we expect people to see only like the positive intention that we have whenever we request something, we ask for something, but it's very important, and this is from my experience, whenever we notice that that's not the case, just to take the time to explain what our intentions are, to give the reason, the motive, and what is expected, and why we require the things we require. And it's not just with the team, like as a leader, but with colleagues, especially with people that you don't see face to face every day, like us. So, and when you do that, I've learned that you won't have any issues in resolving any matter or any issue, or maybe agreeing on something, or putting a procedure in place. So just take the time to explain your motives.
Yeah, thank you, Maya. I love this sharing of good practice because it's just really helpful, isn't it? And I hope you're finding it helpful just to hear what other people do to that in these situations. We're talking about some very practical, some very tricky things sometimes to handle. So it's really good to be learning that good practice from each other. Maya, did you put your hand up again? No, okay, that's fine. I just, that's okay. I didn't want to miss what you were saying. Okay, so going on to the next thing, and this was something else that Cy Wakeman said, and it's sort of going on again to how can we, if there is that drama, using the feedback tools that we've been talking about, help someone to sort of move beyond that. So helping someone to see that they might be creating a story about the reality. You know, what are the actual facts here? We might need to just keep doing this a few times with people. You know, what do you know for sure? What is it I know for sure about this situation? Or to manage our own need for drama. Because if we're honest, we all have a little bit of it there too, don't we? Not exaggerating too. What do I actually know? What are the facts? Have I done a bit of analysis? Again, forcing people back to that S-bar. And then what can I do to help? And then what would great look like? And then so helping people through these processes of managing their need for drama. And, you know, it's going to take a little while and a lot of reinforcement and alignment, isn't it, to sort of get the message across to people. You know, drama isn't necessary. I think Holly used the word this week, non-negotiable. Yeah, actually, it is a thing that we need to deal with as leaders. So it's not just a, well, this would be nice if we have the time, but actually this is something that does need to be dealt with. And, you know, all of these tools that we've been talking about this morning, I think are just so important in knowing how to deal with these dramas in a helpful and positive and constructive way. And I like this other little quote I put on there from Cy Wakeman: feelings are expressed in one sentence. So you don't want to, what we're not trying to do is tell people, you know, you can't feel angry, you can't feel frustrated, because clearly we do when things happen. But saying, I feel angry because I just had got through doing that, and then the person I was doing it for gave me a piece of information that they have had for 3 weeks and didn't give me, so I have to start all over again. That's fine to say that. But to make a huge drop, that is the facts. I do feel frustrated about that, but then I can learn to manage that. But if you come in and make a big hoo-ha about it, oh, you won't believe what's happened, this person didn't give me, they knew this 3 weeks ago and they didn't give it to me, that's not necessary. You see what I mean? So, you know, this is all part of emotional intelligence, self-awareness, managing ourselves. Is yes, something's happened. Yes, I feel frustrated, or yes, I feel angry. It's okay to feel those things, but then to put them into perspective and manage them rather than get carried away by them. And Amy, I don't know if you have any tips about that, because I know these are things you're dealing with too, isn't it? That are along the same lines. And I know that I've had people come on and say, yeah, this is the way we try and help our clients and the people we're caring for to deal with things as well. Yeah.
So it's just finding my mute button. Yeah, I mean, we talk about those kind of like validating responses and active listening. So making sure, you know, we're actually listening to people. So instead of trying to fix their problems, we're, you know, being like, that sounds really hard. That must be really tough for you. I understand in your situation. So instead of, you know, when someone comes and says, you know, I think so-and-so was really awful for making that loud noise. You don't go, well, they were doing that because they were cooking in the kitchen. You say, that must have been really tough for you. Do you want to talk about it? So instead of shutting people down, and it's actually really difficult to be validating when about we were trying to do some validated videos to teach people how to do it, and one of our practitioners kept slipping up when they were trying to do it, like even through practice and through knowing and through teaching. And so it was quite funny. He was like, I didn't realize how hard it is when you're actually intentionally trying to validate someone, because your instinct is to try and fix it and to try and make people feel better, but actually that isn't what helps people. You know, you need to support them to come up with their own solutions, which is why that kind of coaching works really well. And those questions that we use, you know, when you're asking so many questions, it's like, you know, what can I do to help? How could have this gone better? Instead of telling people, if people work it out for themselves, they're much more likely to follow through on it. So
they are. That's the hardest thing in coaching too, isn't it? Most of us are fixers. We want to sort people out, and we think we know what they should do, but they're not going to take it on board, as you say, unless we do that. So when you get those videos done, we'd love to see them.
Yeah, well, they should be done by the end of this quarter. So it's specific to a person we're supporting, but I can share them with you.
Yeah, but those principles are so good. And I know when I've been talking to Tamsin, I think I said something one time about soft skills being hard, and she said they're not just hard, but hardcore. You know, it's not easy. These things are not easy. That's why we're talking about them. You know, it isn't just, oh, follow this process diagram and it will work. You know, and we need to talk about, well, exactly how, and how can we do that? And as I said, share that good practice among you, because it isn't easy to do all this stuff.
And also it takes practice. So, like, you know, to change a behavior that we're all used to being a, you know, something that we've always done, something we've grown up with people doing to us, to actually change a behavior and be able to respond kind of effectively like that, it's going to take lots of practice. So, you know, practice it with your families, practice it with your friends, do it all the time, and then it becomes second nature. Whereas if you're just doing it with a person you support or one of your colleagues, it's not going to be second nature. I mean, because this stuff goes across, you know, your life and stuff at home as well, doesn't it?
It really does. And these things do go very deep, don't they, from our upbringing to really hard to do that. So yeah, thank you so much for that, Amy. Okay, sorry, my Zoom controls have just totally disappeared for some reason, best known to themselves. So hopefully they'll come back in a second. It's odd. I don't know that I've ever had that happen before. Hopefully Zoom's not playing up. Let me just go on to the next slide though. And what I'd like you to think about really are some action points to practice as a result of what we've been doing today. And I want to, if I can get the Zoom controls back. That's very odd. As I spend my life on Zoom, you would found them. Okay. I'm going to put you into breakout rooms again, but I'll ask Zoom to switch them around this time. And this time I'm just going to give you 10 minutes. And so if you would please, in 10 minutes, just talk about some action points that we could implement, and then we'll share those together when you come back. Welcome back, everyone, for that. And as we're winding up this morning, it would be good to just have your action points. We are recording the meeting, but I'm thinking I may also just try and capture them for you on a slide so that we can have them on a PDF, as long as I can do it quickly, because I don't know how many of you will end up listening to the recording. So I'll try and keep up. I will be looking at the camera because I'll be typing on the other screen, and then the PDF I'll share with you afterwards will include your action points, hopefully. Okay, so room one, first of all, that was Chloe, Ellie, Holly, and Jenny. Do you want to give me any of your action points, please?
Let's see. I think for us, we were talking about being role models ourselves in the first instance, and also being more self-aware. So knowing that if you're tired or you're unwell, or that, you know, there's certain triggers in the situation to pull yourself away.
Yeah, yes. So recognizing triggers. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Jenny. Okay. Room two was Anna, Carol, Dan, and Leona. You can have more than one as well, people, just however many you have.
I mean, we've got a few points down. It's the use of language, clear direction, follow up, which we all kept leading back to, was the fact of the time and to go back and factual, open questions to get dialogue, body language, being very open, not threatening, etc., confidentiality, safe space, not to take things personally. As we said, a time frame. So to sort of start with the intention that something will be resolved, or certainly to help follow up, making sure that everything is written down. If it hasn't been written down, it doesn't exist. And yeah, confidentiality. I'm not sure if I've missed any.
I probably have, but if I have, try and add them. Yeah. Yeah, and these are just going to be rough notes, but hopefully it will remind you when you see them later. Okay, thank you. Room 3 was Amy, Claire, Paul, and Rebecca.
Hiya. Yeah, so we had quite good conversations. We came up with one action, ours were quite practical actions. So Paul was saying about using the wellness action plan with all his team, so actually giving them the opportunity to tell them what triggers them and those sort of things. So I thought that was a really good one. Rebecca was saying communicating the right way with the staff team, so being kind to them and then asking questions, so doing the empathy, then asking questions instead of blaming people, and trying to understand their point of view before making assumptions, and then together working towards an action plan on that point. And Claire said that she was going to work on supporting her staff to take ownership, like an accountability for their own actions and their own roles and things like that. And I said that I'm going to practice giving feedback using kind of the empathy first model. So kind of building on the connections that we already have, and, you know, supporting people to understand why we're giving the feedback, that we want them to grow and we want them to learn, and kind of being really really intentional about that kind of connection piece, because I think sometimes that I miss that, like reflectively from feedback I've given quite recently, I kind of missed that, and I think that that's something I need to grow with. So
thank you, Amy, that's fantastic. And the next room was Angela, Chantel, and the room at head office.
Okay, so I'm feeding back, and I've probably got quite a bit to feed back on, so if I am going on for too long, please just stop me. So we have said, and this is a mix of what everyone said, so we've said in our core team meetings and within our office meetings, we're going to bring up our core values and discuss what they actually mean for us as a business and what they mean for those that we're supporting. We identified that language is really, really important, and it's important for us to have that awareness. We're going to support the people that we support, you know, within our teams, to take things forward for themselves, and to support those with finding solutions. We're going to validate people's feelings and ensuring that others feel heard, and we're really going to focus on people's feelings. We're going to, and we said that we really liked what I think it was Ivana said, to look at opportunities rather than seeing things as an issue. We see behind the line and take the opportunity to turn it to above the line. So I think it was Steph that actually said, where you recognised a certain behaviour, we need to act on it immediately and adapt that from being below the line to above the line where it should be. We're going to support others to be solution focused. Again, so the language around using the above the line and below the line gives us a really set framework for us to work on, so that when we're speaking to it within our teams or our clinicians, we can say, actually, you know, this is our framework and this is where we think that this behaviour is right now, and we think it would be really good format to be using. April said around changing headlines within our L10s to really focus on one, to be personal, and then one, to demonstrate how what it is that they've done is aligned and supports our core values. And for those that aren't aware of our core values, it's really an opportunity for us to upskill those around those, and also to support the teams that we all support to redo their trait tests, and really see where it is that they are now, where they were previously, and see how we can best support those.
Thank you, Chantel. Hopefully I got most of that anyway. Thanks, that was great. Room 5 was Amy, Gemma, and Kuti.
Hi guys, yeah, so quite a lot of things have been said, so I'll cover off the ones that haven't been. We did say about implementing the SBAR throughout the teams and into our clinician teams as well. Growing our confidence around feedback, so it's led with our sort of language and making sure it's kind and compassionate and relevant. Seeking to understand the behaviours and the reasons behind the behaviours, and then working with the individuals to understand the impact that that's creating. We've identified that email trails can cause quite a bit of unneeded drama. So pledging to pick the phone up more and sort of see people face to face rather than flying around with emails. Once we've had a meeting or we followed up, making sure that the understanding is agreed and that everybody is, on the same page and aligned as we move away from that. And where need to be to sort of follow up with an email trail so that there's an audit process for all involved. And then the last one was just following through on any agreed actions.
Thank you, well done. Okay, that's fantastic, Gemma, thank you. And room 6 was Kim, Maya, Maria and Robin.
Yeah, so we obviously, a lot of people have touched base on what we discussed as well. I mean, we agreed what Gemma's just said about utilising the SBAR with clinicians and colleagues.
Yeah.
And we feel that this would work well with discouraging negative behaviour. We also kind of touched on the importance of accountability, and it comes down to us and what behaviour we encourage as well. So and also about making sure that we're setting clear expectations, because we are setting an example as well to our colleagues. Using our time wisely and ensuring we're creating a solution as well, rather than discussing the drama. And I also liked Ashley Fox's thing about making sure that below the line and above the line is visual for everyone as well.
Thank you. I'm just going to show you what I've written now, so that if I've totally misconstrued what anyone said, it's not too late to tell me. And then what I'll do is turn it into a PDF and put it into the chat for you. So I'll share the screen again. So some of it obviously is a little bit of repetition, but actually there were an awful lot of different things there too, weren't there? So just have a quick look down there. If I've totally misconstrued what you've said, let me know. So I think follow-up came up lots and lots of times. It's really important, isn't it, that we do go back and follow up with people. I'm just going on to the next slide there, and I'll give you all these afterwards. Okay, seeing some nods there, and then okay, so I'll stop sharing so I can make that into a PDF, but any final comments or thoughts about that? Any of the things you've said, anything anyone would like to say?
Just to say thank you. I think it's been really useful to listen, and there's a lot to take on and marinate on. Yeah, thank you.
There really is a lot, isn't there? And thank you for your input, everybody. And that's what these leadership sessions are all about, just so that we can do that sharing of good practice and talk about things that are going on for everybody and what we might do about them. You should have that PDF now with you. Okay. Holly, is there anything you'd like to say to finish things up today?
Yeah, so I guess just thank you everybody for taking out the time of your very busy schedules to be here. It's so important that we invest you know, our time in developing on some of these key areas. And I think, you know, absolutely what the title says, I think if we can all commit to, you know, really actioning those things we've talked about today and really ditching the drama. So it'd be great to get everybody's commitment on who's been on this call, that we will be ditching the drama, and yeah, being really role modeling those things as well. And also I do really highly recommend that everybody has a chance to read the No Ego book by C.Y. Wakeman. It really goes into a lot more detail about what we've talked about today. So if you do like reading, it is a very, very good book. So once we follow up in an email, I will put the link in there as well if you guys do want to explore a little bit more about this topic.
Yeah, and I think you should already have an invitation, but the next leadership workshop is the 15th of December, Friday the 15th of December. Is that right, Holly?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I think I'll just pop that in the chat as well, but I'm not sure if you've yet had a calendar invitation, but yeah, so have a good weekend, everyone. I will see you all, well, definitely then, I hope, but probably before that. And do be thinking too, in addition of making sure that your team have access to the development workshops that are going on